So today we're going to take you through the progression that we take just about every one of our clients through before they deadlift, all right? So the hinge exercise or the deadlift is probably one of the most important exercises that we do in the gym, whether it's for strength training, for athleticism, or just for general health. All right, it's a total body movement that's going to require you to make sure that we're dialing in the movement very well before we touch a weight. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is the Dowel Hip Hinge. So Coach Rob's going to take this dowel. His feet are going to be just inside shoulder width, all right, toes pointing straight, and he's going to put the dowel so that there's 3 points of contact. His head in between his shoulder blades and his tailbone, all right? We want his hand right behind his lower back and the other hand behind the neck. All right, so the first thing that we want to make sure is that he's locking down his core and he's also keeping his upper body in a nice straight line. So the cue that we'll use is to shoot his hips down and back with soft knees so that he's really keeping that spine in a nice neutral position. Okay, go ahead. So down and back, shooting the hips back, and he'll feel a bit of a hamstring stretch there, up and through. And we want to make sure that at the top, his joints are stacked, head, shoulder, rib cage, hips, knees, and ankles are all in a nice straight line. Okay, shoot the hips back, down and back, and then up and through, squeeze the glutes at the top, just like on a hip thrust. All right, the next thing we may do is add a band around his knees, okay, whether it's a mini band or a slingshot band. That's going to go right around his knees, and he's going to drive the knees out. Think about spreading the ground as he's doing this movement. So rib cage down, core tight, shooting the hips back, driving the knees out, and then he's going to come up and through, and again, finish at the top. All right, so this is very important that we dial this movement in, that we're not either bending at the back or at the spine so that the dowel comes off of his butt or his tailbone, okay, or he's not overarching and losing the connection with his ribs and his core. So the next step that we're going to use, and sometimes this is actually the strength movement for the day, is the single kettlebell deadlift. We love this movement because it allows us to load the exercise without overdoing it early on. Okay, a lot of the times our athletes just want to go right to the barbell, just go right to the hex bar, but we're going to slow down that process and make sure that we're dialing in that movement and that we understand how to move first before we go into a strength exercise. All right, so what he's going to do is kind of get on top of the kettlebell. We want to make sure that the handles of the kettlebell, if they were to go straight through, they would go right through his leg, the middle of his leg, and the back of the kettlebell lines up with his heels. Okay, so it's the same exact movement. The hinge comes from the hips. He's shooting his hips down and back, keeping his rib cage down while keeping his core tight. All right, and the other thing that we're going to focus on here is also that his lats are engaged, so his shoulders are down and back, keeping that shoulder in a nice position, nice neutral position, as well as keeping his neck in a neutral position. So one thing that we may tell them to do is to tuck the chin. Okay, so we don't want to be looking straight up, and we don't want to be tucking all the way down either. All right, so he's going to do, again, that same movement. All right, driving the hips down and back, shoulders down and back. He's going to grab the kettlebell, come up and through, stand nice and tall, shoulders back, big chest, nice and tall at the top. Okay, so he's reaching as he goes down, reaching down to his heels, up and through, keeping that neutral spine in a good position. Okay, and the entire time he's hinging in that position. We don't want to see rounding of the back. We don't want him to just place the weight down, even whether it's the first rep or the last one. We want to make sure that he's hinging each time. Should be feeling this in his glutes and his hamstrings. Okay, one thing as a coach I may do, if I'm seeing that they're either heads coming too far forward or they're rounding their back, I'll put that dowel on their back as they go through the movement and just make sure that we're keeping that neutral position the entire time, and that the movement's coming from the hips, not from the spine, okay? All right, so now we've moved on to the trap bar deadlift, okay? So this is the thing that you'll see this on our Instagram, you see this on our website. These are the exercises that we're gonna be progressing to, but again, we wanna make sure that we showed you the warm-up progression before we touch the hex bar or the trap bar, all right? So first thing we're gonna do is make sure that the setup is proper, all right? So Coach Rob's gonna step inside the hex bar. We want to make sure, one thing that I'll look for here is the corners here. He's pretty much lining up his big toe on the corners of the hex bar, and we're making sure that, again, if this bar were to go straight through, it would actually drive right through his shins. So we want to make sure that we're in a good position, we're not standing too far back in the hex bar itself. All right, setup is so important. All right, next part, he's just going to grab the bar into what we say take the slack out of the bar. So again, hinging, shoulders down and back, nice good position. And if you hear that click, that means he's taking the slack out of the bar, so he's not ready to push through the ground just yet or pick up the weight. He's just getting his body ready and locking down his lats, getting his hips active, and his feet screwed into the ground, driving out. Okay, so that should be a nice perfect position there. So relax, coach. So that's the first step, is to make sure that your setup is correct. All right, and again, we're driving our shoulders down and back to activate our lats. We're pushing through the ground, spreading the ground, and almost screwing them into the ground at the same time, keeping that core nice and tight so we have a nice neutral position. All right, so let's get back into that position. All right, so he's taking the slack out of the bar. First thing we're doing is thinking about pushing through the ground to get tall and bringing those hips all the way through. Go ahead. Good. Down and back. Push through the ground. Down and back. Push through the ground. Good. So again, at the top, he should be looking straight ahead, shoulders down and back, core tight, should not be rounding his lower back, and shouldn't be letting his arms come forward. Pretty much from his hips to the top of his head, don't move. All right? It's mostly a hip dominant movement, a little bit of movement at the knees. All right? So again, this is a very important movement and a very important exercise, but you have to make sure that you understand the movement first so that you don't get hurt and you're getting the most out of every exercise you do in the gym. So give that a try, let us know how it went, and also let us know if we can help you in any way. So if you like this video, do us a favor, like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend.